Hello, this is Christina WALLIS again. I hope you're all well, and today I am going to address two popular requests I get on my YouTube channel, namely how to make a flower of gardenia that's rapidly making its way back into flower fashion, and also how to use Deco Clay, a clay that's very popular for making flowers in some countries. If this is the first time ever you hear about Deco, please don't worry, you do not need to know anything about it to successfully make flowers either out of cold porcelain or Gumpaste. It's just a nice clay that is also used to make flowers in some countries, such as Japan, where it originates from, and I just thought it'd be nice to kind of cover it in on my channel that is about flowers. So here I'm making a flower head, and I'm about to do something that I recommend to all of you to never ever do. Namely, I'm going to make a flower head and then I'm going to use it straight away without drying it overnight, which is what you really should do if you don't want your flower to just fall off unexpectedly. But yeah, I'd forgotten to make these overnight and they're irregular shape, so I am just going to take that risk, and if worst comes to the worst, then I'm going to use super glue. Naturally, for the center we're going to use the smallest cutout, and cutting out is quite easy when it comes to Deco Clay, because Deco Clay actually it feels a little bit like marshmallow, very non-sticky marshmallow. I think the base of this clay is cellulose and nothing like cold porcelain actually, so it's very light and airy. For those of you who've seen me work with cold porcelain and Gumpaste, you would probably notice that I work with my fingers trying to shape these little petals a lot more than I would if I was to work with cold porcelain or Gumpaste. This is because Deco is very gentle and very responsive, and so fingertips, which are also quite sensitive, they work really well with it, I find, and you don't have to push too hard with them, unless of course you're trying to vein it. And if you're trying to vein it, push as hard as you can, and most likely your Deco would be absolutely fine. In fact, Deco is more responsive to the veiners than any other medium I worked with. And so here's my fingertips shaping this petal, and as you can see, I will make this little curve on one side. So if the petal is facing you, you should have this little curve on your left side. As you're looking at the screen is obviously the right side, and yeah, all your petals, and here I have 10, have to be shaped exactly the same, and there is a reason for that. You would be able to see it in a minute, but for now I am just sticking these petals together. To attach them to each other, I'm using glue, and this glue that I'm using here is quite liquid, quite runny, so that it doesn't dry as quick and gives me more of a flexibility, if that makes sense. And the reason why I'm thinning this side of the double petal is because it's going to get wrapped around the center, so it will just make my life easier, I believe. Now you have your first double petal in place. The second one should be easier. You should just follow the suit and repeat the pattern exactly. So keep them all at the same height, but obviously make a little step. Sometimes if you start wrapping it in from the middle and then go outwards, it would give you that step naturally. Either way is fine. Sometimes it does require a little bit of practice, and sometimes people just understand how it works very quickly. And for those of you who are watching this video and have no intention of making a gardenia, then go ahead, try to make best of it by using this technique with your roses perhaps, because yeah, a lot of techniques, they tend to kind of mimic each other. So now you're on your third double petal, and if it's all going smoothly and wonderfully, then congratulations. If it doesn't though, give yourself a chance. Have a little practice with this one, have a little play until you get a feel for it, and you know, certainly don't give up. This is a weird little pattern, and it can be quite elusive, and I hope I kind of covered it in enough of a close-up and in enough of a detail, and I haven't been speeding it up. So I hope you're okay with this one, because it is a nice little pattern to know. Now you could do all of it with single petals. I have no idea if it's easier or harder. I suspect it's more or less the same kind of a principle, and I've just wanted to give it a little bit more body to the middle. I have no idea if it's botanically correct or not, this double petaling, but looking at the immense number of different gardenias that are out there, I think most people would be hard pushed to kind of state with any confidence that no, it just, these petals can't double up, and etc, etc. And that is the irony with botanical reproduction of flowers. So this is where your last layer meets the very first, and you just fold it in. I don't know how to explain it, just rewind it again, or rewind it a few times if you've missed it the first time round. And now it's in place, and if you like it, then just take a toothpick and start straightening it up. Further down in the video, I'm going to give you the map of this flower, which hopefully would make it easier to understand what's going on. And also you would see another variety of this center, not a tutorial because it's quite a long tutorial as is, but just another center that I made, and I did not separate this double petals, and it just gives you a slightly different look, not a different species of gardenia, but just kind of maybe less blooming middle or something. You will see what I mean. In fact, I'm gonna stick a picture in it now in a corner, so you'll see what I mean. It may look different, but it still looks kind of in tune with this first one. and you could pinch the bottom. If you think you have too much of a bottom here, you could always pinch the excess, and that's where it's nice to have your flower head pre-dried as well, because then you would be able to see to differentiate between the soft clay that could be easily pinched off and the harder clay underneath, which should stay in place unless you want your flower head just to come off the wire. So now I'm going to add a little bit of interest to my gardenia by tinting it, this lovely color. I don't have it in oil paint, unfortunately, so I'm using edible dust and Nivea. And here I'm gonna have a paste to create a bit of a color graduation effect, because once your deco flower is dry, you can't really dust or paint it at all. Okay, so now I'm moving on to making a first layer of petals around the spirally center. And I'm going to start this with doing something that is not generally advised to do when you work with Deco Clay. I am going to wire these petals. I'm going to do one wired and one unwired. I just want to try and attempt a more upright looking flower, and we'll see what happens. Maybe wire is not a good thing to use with Deco Clay and it will all go wrong, but yeah, let's have a look. I've not found any references on using wire, using deco with wire, so yeah, I just thought it's just easier to kind of have a go and see what happens. Now I'm going to spare you suspense and just mention that there are drawbacks in working with wires. It just turns to, the clay so soft that it just tends to poke out of it so easily. So yeah, it's quite hard to keep wired petals tidy. So, and the gain, well, you'll judge by yourself whether you liked or even see the difference between non-wired and a wired look. But I would say that yeah, wire is something that you might not want to experiment with when you first start using deco, if you do. And this is my non-wired gardenia. So basically everything, every bit of the process is exactly the same, except you skip the bit where you wire your petal. And obviously, because you don't have to worry about the wiring grooves and those little groove boards and things, it makes your life a lot easier anyway. And so with my first layer, much as with the second one, I kind of mimic what I've done with the center. I try to keep the whole shape of the petals quite casual, and yet I'm going to try to keep, at the same time, I'm going to try and keep one of the sides more curled up, and they kind of overlap each other and at least slightly follow the pattern of the middle of the flower. I don't know if it shows or not on this flower, but this is what I was trying to do here. And before I forget, if it's your first time on my channel and you're finding this video in some way interesting or entertaining to yourself, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button not to miss any of my regular uploads. And for my regular viewers and subscribers, thank you very much for coming back and watching my videos and being active with your comments, with your compliments, with your suggestions and with your feedback. That really does help my channel, and I hope that's fun for you also. Thank you for being there for this channel, really. So with my experimental wire deco, I want to show you bits that went wrong. Now here I used water and I should have used glue, so the wire started to come out, which is annoying, but it was fixable. I just put the wire back. Something like this, it's also fixable, but a lot less so when it's on a flower. So yeah, my impression of it was that it's really quite tricky to use wire with it when it comes to the end of it. You really have to support your petals and know that they're know why you're doing it. If it's worth it at the end for your project, then yes, it seems that wiring is possible, but it's really hassle-some. So my advice, based on my limited experience with wiring deco, would be yes, you could do it, but pick your battles carefully. So, but with all being said, now that I have my wired petals, it does actually give them a nice carcass. I think that without wires you would probably have to have these petals a little bit thicker, so less delicate, for them to stand up quite as straight. Or maybe you could just dry your deco really upright with a lot of support, and then it would be as kind of upright and determined a shape. Maybe, I don't know, this is just based on my quite moderate or even limited experience with Deco Clay, but yeah, it's a lovely clay. I mean, it has a reputation for making flowers that don't look very lifelike, and I think up to an extent it may be true, but with some flowers, for example gardenia, I think it really worked. I think it would work with magnolia, and I think it would work with I don't know what else. It would work with some chrysanthemums as well. With rose, probably not so, not as well. And you know, whatever petals that are very thin in real life, I think it would be harder to recreate them in deco. But it's a lovely clay. What do you think? What did you make of it? Please make sure you leave me a comment on whether you'd used it or you haven't, or you'd like to. And of course let me know if you would like to see more tutorials in deco flowers.